Study session, and I would like to take just a moment of silence to honor Ann Wolf. I just remember Ann as she came to these meetings, and she sat where Les is sitting tonight. She always slipped in late and sat there and was present. And so if we could just have a moment of silence for Ann Wolf. Thank you. I believe all the commissioners went home, so we will not recognize them. I think they had a long and tiring day. Vicki, if you would place that call, please. Our first order of business is the University Student Center and Flex Tech Building Survey presented by Vice President Lisa Murphy and Keith Frederick. And then on the phone we will have Frederick Pauls. Keith Frederick is here, or Keith Frederick is on?
You'll have Keith Frederick on the line.
Okay.
And he is with Frederick's.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, while Vicki is getting him on the phone, I would like to recognize a couple of special guests that we have here with us tonight. Todd Bishop and George McIlvaine, would you please stand and be recognized? Todd Bishop is with Kaiser Corp. He's our financial advisor, and George McIlvaine is the vice president of our foundation board, and they are here to support us and answer any questions. So I would like to welcome and thank them.
Thank you, Lisa.
The board meeting has been called to order and you're on the speakerphone.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We can.
We are ready for you, Keith.
All right, you want me to, I'll just jump right in on the poll presentation then, if that's okay.
Perfect.
A quick introduction, my name is Keith Frederick. I run a company called Frederick Polls. We're located in Arlington, Virginia, East Coast, but we conduct a lot of polling in the Mountain Time Zone, and I'm very happy to be able to do this project here. I will first explain the methodology, which should be on the front page of the presentation that you're looking at. We interviewed 300 respondents across Laramie County. The people that we interviewed were what we call super voters. They're people who have a history of voting in nearly every, if not every single election that's ever held there locally. And we wanted to go to these people because if in fact the next chance to put a bond measure on the ballot is November of this year, 2013, that's an off year, and history of voting in off-year elections, special elections, small turnout elections is the best predictor of who's going to vote this time. So we wanted to go just to those people. We interviewed folks by telephone. We included both cell phone and landline numbers. The margin of error is 5.6%. We conducted this toward the end of January. 16th to 22nd, fairly recently. So this will just keep I'll probably remind you of who we interviewed as we keep going along, but it's the most likely voters in the community. So next slide is a section description of the positive mood of the electorate. And the next few slides will show you what I mean by that. On page 3, we asked folks in the poll to rate the local economy, and we do these kind of background questions because no election occurs in a vacuum. It really does depend on what kind of frame of mind the voters are in when they're asked to approve, especially a revenue ballot measure like this one is. So rating the local economy, 84% majority rate the local economic conditions positive. It was 8% excellent and 76% good, only 15% negative. And this should create a pretty receptive mood to consider a bond referendum, and that people think that things are going pretty well for the local economy. This, by the way, is better, and in some cases significantly better than you see in other communities right now in America. So folks in Laramie County, Cheyenne are feeling pretty good about where things are going currently. And tax mood is the next page, number 4. This, of course, is important because there's a potential property tax increase included with a bond measure. In this case, we find 63% majority of the voters say the current property tax level is acceptable. Even a majority of Republicans are positive, which again is not a condition that you find that often throughout the country. This low anti-tax mood, only 34% say taxes are too high, is another signal that it's a pretty good time you want to move forward with a bond. Just so you know, we asked people we did party by self-identified registration. You know, how are you registered to vote? And a 59% majority of our respondents in the community are Republicans. So you got nearly 60% Republican, and among those Republicans, they're 63% positive for taxes, saying that they're acceptable. They're either about right or even a little bit low. Most of those, of course, are about right. So you got a good feeling towards the economy, a good tax mood, and then table 5, the opinion for Laramie County Community College. 90% are favorable for the college. Nearly half, 47%, are very favorable. We like to take our positive measures in polling and try to divide an intense positive and sort of a milder positive. In this case, the intense positive is very favorable, nearly half. Overall favorable is 90%. So, to conclude that section, you have a positive feeling about the economy, a very positive feeling. You've got a low anti-tax mood, with only 1/3 thinking taxes are too high, close to 2/3 saying they're about right, and you got a very positive feeling toward the community college. So this all creates a good, positive atmosphere, potentially for a bond ballot. Now, this next section in Table 6, I described this as the difference between the wording and the concept of a ballot. And that's what this next table is, Table 7. This is pretty much the guts of the poll. And what we did was we asked a potential bond ballot 2 different ways. The one on the left that you see, sometimes I know that the typeface can be kind of small on a PowerPoint projector, but the one on the left is projected ballot wording. It's actually a little truncated because, again, remember that we were doing this over the telephone, so it's a little tricky to read them the entire potential bond ballot wording, but we cut it down to a few sentences, and that's the more legalese side. And then on the right-hand side, we explained the bond, what it would build, what it would do, and exactly how much it would cost taxpayers. On the left, when we asked the bond wording, we get 42% yes and 48% no. So you don't pass it, you fail. But on the right, when we describe what's going on in the bond, we get 63% yes and 32% no's. A significant 21-point movement in positive when voters understand what the bond's about, and clear passage at 63%. Now, what I like to do is just read to you the 2 sides so that you get a clear understanding of what we asked. On the left-hand side, the question we asked exactly was, and again, this was over the telephone. Next, I'll read you the wording of a possible ballot issue that Laramie County voters might or might not be asked to vote on. After hearing it, tell me if you would be likely to vote yes or vote no on it. Like most ballot issues, it's written in legal terms and language. Here it is. Shall the Board of Trustees of Laramie County Community College District be authorized to issue general obligation bonds in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $20 million for the purpose of the planning, designing, engineering, constructing, furnishing, and equipping of a new university student center and flex tech classroom lab facility to be constructed on the district's Cheyenne campus, with such bonds to be payable from ad valorem property taxes levied against all taxable property in the district. Okay, that's your legal ballot wording. Again, it fails. 48% no, 42% yes. On the other, and then right after that, literally right after that, in the questionnaire, we read this. Let me give you more information about this ballot issue and ask your vote again. This $20 million bond would be used to build 2 new facilities at Laramie County Community College campus. One would be a Flex Tech Center to teach students the technology skills needed in today's workforce for jobs such as those related to high-tech precision welding, the energy production field, auto or engine maintenance, and heating and air conditioning systems. The second building would address the college's need for student services as well as more classroom space to handle growth. If passed, this bond would increase property taxes for homeowners by a little over $20 per year, equal to less than $2 per month for every $100,000 of home value. So again, voters hear a description of what's to be built, what it will, exactly what the students will be learning, the need for it, and how much it'll exactly cost, and the community support rises to a significant level of 63%, and the bond passes. So I think right here, what you see on this chart is what could happen on the left if you put a ballot issue out there, crafted in the kind of language that the law requires you to craft it in, put it out there and let people vote on it. It's likely to lose. But on the right, you have the world where voters actually are voting on what is really behind the bond, how much it'll really cost them, and how much it'll really do. In other words, they're educated. When they're educated, it passes, and it passes with a significant majority. So I got more charts, but we're going to come back to this one because it is the gist of what the poll's all about. Okay, so on the next page, what I do on page 8 is just take a couple of the voter groups that are most supportive of the ballot, just to show you, the kinds of people who have to vote if this is going to pass. Again, the ballot wording is the one up top, which is the 42 yes, 46 no, and the ballot concepts at the bottom half, 63, 32, and across the side there you see the best groups. Democratic voters are at 50% on the ballot wording versus 73%. 50% on the ballot wording, 73% on the concept. But again, Democratic voters are a minority, as you know, in this community. They're at 32% of our sample. Younger voters, 18 to 44-year-olds, are 65% on the ballot wording, significantly better than anybody else. They go up a little higher to 72 down at the bottom. Women voters are at 45 on the ballot concept. Women voters under 65, as you sort of expect, are at 48%, a pretty good group to start with. I compare that, I left the women voters over 65, females over 65, start at only 38%, but when they hear the concept, they go all the way up to 70%. They gain 32 points. College graduates start at 46, go to 68, and the people that the majority that think taxes are okay start at 51 and go to 73. So, I mean, this chart is basically here just to kind of show you the kind of coalition of voters that definitely have to vote if it's going to have a chance to pass. And it's women, younger voters, younger women, but especially older women who are educated about what the value of the proposition is, Democrats, college graduates. All right, then we, on table 9, we also asked, because there are 2 different potential funding mechanisms, which voters prefer. And when given the choice, the longer-term bond with a lower monthly cost is preferred over the shorter-term property tax levy by 46% to 35%. Preference is consistent across party lines. It's 46-35 overall for the bond over the property tax. It's the same among Republicans, 46-35, 48-41 with Democrats, and a big 43-17 with independents, with a large number of them saying they don't care. They would take either one. Okay, so let's go to the last section of data findings, and that's reaction to pro-bond messages. Now, the sequence of the questionnaire is pretty much following the way I'm laying it out here. So these were asked after people had voted on the respondents had given us their opinion on the ballot language and on the concepts. So we read them some statements, and then we asked them whether their reaction positive. And then the last column over is a group that we always look at in the polling, which are the people who are persuaded to move to voting yes on the bond. What is their very positive opinion of the statement? The four statements that are on the first page here, and there's 3 pages of these, all get over 50% very positive. And in political polling that we do for candidates or for bond issues, being over 50% very positive is an indicator of a message that moves voters is very strong. And you'll see as I read these that a common theme among most of them is the historical track record that LCCC has in executing well on these bond measures. So the one at the top, the first one, is as with the last bond project, once it is completed, the temporary tax increase will go away once the bond debt is paid off. 54% are very positive toward that, 75 total positive. And that's a bigger 60% positive, very positive, excuse me, with the swing group. Now, that may be something that those of us who are intimately aware of bond issues just take for granted and say, well, yeah, of course, it goes away. But in the minds of voters, and I've studied this quite a bit, in the minds of voters, once a tax is put in place, they believe it never goes away. So to tell them that this is different, this is a bond, and in a bond, it's temporary tax, and I think that word temporary is a very good word for us to use. Temporary tax increase, it goes away once the bond debt's paid off, and somebody, of course, is going to say immediately to you, yeah, sure. You can say, well, we did it with the last one. Community college is debt-free. We paid off our last bond. The second one down there is, again, historical record. As with the previous 2006 bond project that built a healthcare sciences facility training students in nursing, radiology, high-tech health tech careers, LCCC has a proven record producing graduates with job skills needed in the marketplace. That's a 52% very positive and overall 81% total positive. That's the highest on the total positive. Again, it speaks to the credibility that LCCC has in asking for this new bond, and it also goes to the very important messages we see here, job skills needed in the marketplace. And that job skills was a component that was in that bond concept description that got 63% vote. That was not in, but it was not in the legal terminology that was the ballot vote that only got 42% yes. So I think the job skills is a very important component of what we're doing here. The third one, again, more job skills. This one says, third one down, if Laramie County is to grow and attract the type of good-paying, high-tech jobs in the future, it needs to invest now in teaching our youth the skills they need to do these jobs. Otherwise, these jobs will go elsewhere. Similar to others, it's still over 50% very positive at 51 and a 74 total positive, but very persuasive, very positive, 61% of the swing voters who moved toward the yes vote during the poll. And then lastly on this first page, with this new bond money, LCCC can keep building on its successful programs, like having the nation's largest indoor training facility for wind turbine workers that both promotes more industry in Wyoming and gives our students skills they need to get good paying jobs. This message, I think, is really important and crucial because it speaks to history, which we know is important because the two top ones also speak to that. And it also shows a proven ability in an industry that local voters are familiar with and obviously positive about, because remember, we've got an 84% positive for the local economy. And it talks about student skills to get good paying jobs, which is obviously a really important factor here. Okay, let's go to the second page. These are also powerful and good messages. And in some campaigns I'm in, we don't have any messages that are even as good as these, even though they're kind of in the second tier by a slight margin, in that they're just under 50% and very positive. The bars are all in the 47-48% range. But the total positives are pretty much in the 70s, with the exception of the one at the bottom. And you start to see that the swing vote, the last column over, the numbers are 49, 52, 55, 56, a little bit lower than the 60% numbers that we saw on the first page, but still pretty persuasive and powerful. Now there's 5 here, so I'll go through these a little quicker. The one at the top, given the success of LCCC's last issue, again, we're talking about history and credibility. Last bond issue for the new school science center and other major projects completed at no cost to taxpayers. It has a proven record of building needed college facilities on time and on budget. Now, again, I think this is a very important message and part of the education program here about LCCC's responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and track record. Along with the temporary tax message, in dealing with a majority Republican electorate that we're dealing with here, it's important that they know that the money is going to be spent wisely, spent well, and spent as promised. And of course, as the first message said, go away when it's done. I think that really gives a lot of reassurance to the kind of fiscally conservative voters we're dealing with. The second message on this page, with this new bond, local taxpayers are only being asked to pay part of the cost of these new and needed facilities, since the bond will enable LCCC to qualify for additional matching funding from the state legislature, private industry partner, and other sources. So again, you're going to get more bang for your buck. It's a good investment. Third one down, this bond represents a significant investment in the community's future. Economic studies show that students graduating with skills LCCC provides at nearly $100 million a year to the local economy. Obviously that's a good message. It's a good economic multiplier message. I think maybe before doing the poll, some of us, including me, would have guessed that this would have come out at the top. But clearly there's a little more interest in knowing that the dollar is going to be invested wisely and used wisely. But still, this multiplier effect and economic impact statement is important as well. Fourth one down, now's a good time to make the investment since the college has been debt-free with no bonds outstanding since 2009. I think, again, that speaks to the fiscal stewardship. And the last one on the page, an economic study shows that every dollar invested in LCCC returns a clear profit to the community in the form of higher wages, more jobs, more tax revenues, and lower negative costs associated with crime and drug abuse. So that still scores pretty good, 47% on the very positive. It drops a little bit of the total positive down to 68%. But nonetheless, it's a nice bullet to be putting in our brochures. And then on the last page, 3 out of 3, they're only on the last page because we couldn't fit everything on one page, but the intensity does drop a bit. These are down in the 42, 41 range on the total, on the very positive, and below 70% on the total positive, and below 50% for the first time among those, on the very positive among those were the swing voters. And these last two are, since LCCC student enrollment has grown over 50% in the last decade, it still has waiting lists for students to get in. The bond money is needed to meet the demands of growth, make sure we leave those students behind. Growth is just a little less compelling than everything else, but still has a bit of a constituency, I think, still, especially for the classrooms that are going to be part of the bond package. And then lastly, the benefits this LCCC bond bring to the local community and students is good value, given it'll cost homeowners less than the price of one Starbucks coffee every month for every $100,000 of home value. And that's not bad as a message. 41% very positive, 66% total positive. But as usual in messaging for these bond measures, people don't really want to talk too much about what it's going to cost them. They'd rather talk more about how it's going to be run well and what the value is you're going to get out of it. So we read those. We read all those statements, 11 of them. We read 11 positive statements. Then we re-ask the vote. And having heard this, page 14, having heard this information, do you think you'd vote yes or vote or no for $20 million bond for Laramie County Community College? That was the question wording. We didn't get any other information, no more ballot wording, no more concept. It's just post information. And we go to 65% yes. 65% yes. So we pick up just a couple of points over the 63% yes that we had in concept. But it's pretty clear that you got broad support across the community. When voters are educated, 63% of Republicans say yes, 75% of Democrats say yes, and 49% of independents say yes. So you've got, again, broad support. Now, we asked a follow-up question to that. After hearing all that information, those 11 positives, we want to see which pieces of information, which words stick need are really the biggest ones that are used most often. And then what I did on chart on page 16 is I just pulled out some select quotes, and I sent to Lisa all the quotes that we have. So if anybody wants to read through them all, there is a document with every single quote. But these just give you a flavor. And again, this is how the voters themselves synthesized the information we gave them in the 11 messages and anything else they heard in the poll or no. So I'll read through some of these because they're pretty good. Any investment we make in our community to young people here is good because it will enable our area to be competitive and provide jobs, better education for our kids and opportunity. Well, I guess the major factor for me is that the tax will go away. Better education, it'll bring better jobs here. If we don't do it, then the jobs will just go to South Dakota or Colorado. My editorial on that is I think that's a very insightful statement. I think they really got the message. Next one down, economic growth to the community. It keeps the kids here for the school instead of them going elsewhere to school. The low cost to the community, with their track record, shows they can expand with little or no cost to the community. My editorial on that's an excellent synthesis of everything we told them. The low cost to the community, the track record shows they can expand with little or no cost. Next one down, we need a good college that trains our students the skills they need to be successful in life. Next one, it'll benefit the community overall, the state as well. It'll help provide more jobs. It's just a good deal all around. My comment on that's a very nice summary sort of slogan there. It's a good deal all around. Next to last on that first left-hand column, it would open up more opportunity for the community, especially the young, getting more skills. It's to improve the overall quality of life of the county citizenship, to keep more young people in the state and in the county. As I'm sure many of you may be aware of, when I do a lot of polling across the country in rural areas, and then there's in a lot of areas that traditionally have lost population over the last few decades or so, and there's a big theme of keep our children home, give them opportunities to grow and raise a family here. That resonates out of these open ends for sure. On the right-hand column, it's to make people taxpayers. They cannot be taxpayers if they don't have jobs. My editorial on that's a very Republican way of looking at the world. There's nothing. There's good logic to it. Just to advance the school and to keep it competitive to other schools. Keeps the growth going. We saw on that first chart, 84% are positive about the economy. This keeps it going. Next one down. Sounds like it would do a lot of good for the community as well as for LCC. Sounds like LCCC is being fiscally responsible. That's a nice, if we had a pinball machine, we'd be lighting up the board right there. The future of Laramie County is in our kids. The next one down, a positive input for the community and surrounding area. We need higher skilled people who can be able to work with the likes of wind turbines and energy and oil and even the coal. Again, there's a really nice synthesis of how the economy, the future of the economy and the role that this bond plays in it. Next one, the track record of the college and being responsible with its funding. I believe that's the foundation of how we're going to get this passed, is having that one statement right there, that one thought being translated. And then next to last, provide our kids with a higher education and develop jobs here and keep them here. Again, that theme. And then last, we have to keep moving forward. If you sit, we will be moving backwards. And again, this is just a flavor. This is just a sampling. There's pages and pages of these kind of comments, most of them similar to that. And then, so lastly, in summary at the end, I'd really not like to do a poll that's just a sort of a preaching poll. We like to give people a chance, if they don't agree with what's being said, to give their voice to that. And so in the end of the poll, we did a Citizen Smith versus Citizen Jones and asked people which one they agreed with most. And Citizen Smith, who said, which do you agree with? Citizen Smith, who says, while the community college does good work, raising taxes in a tough economy is a bad idea. because LCCC could expand the skills it teaches and the number of graduates by partnering with private employers who will benefit from these trained workers. And the taxpayers should not be asked to pay higher taxes for something that benefits a select few. Or Citizen Jones, who says that the modest tax increase LCCC is asking for is a good idea and a good investment in more jobs, better paying jobs, and more tax revenue for the community. This bond will allow them to build facilities needed to teach high-tech skills needed in today's workplace. And without expanding the college, this community is at risk of being less competitive to attract and keep the types of companies we and future generations need to thrive. Jones on the yes side gets 67%. Smith on the no side gets 29. So very consistent here. As we go through the poll, 2/3 of the voters, we get 63% early on for the concept. We explain it in simple terms and tell them how much it'll cost. We get 65% yes when we read 11 statements about what the bond will do and why it's needed. And then in the end, after they've thought it all through and they hear what the others, what the naysayers have to say about it, they go to 67%, including 64% of Republicans, 77% of Democrats, and just under half of the independents. And I put the gender by age just to show you there's a bit of a gender gap here, but even the men come along. Men, working age men, 18 to 64, are 61% yes. Working age women, 18 to 64, 79% yes. Male 65 plus are at 54% yes, and then women 65 plus are at 67% yes. What you see there is a very familiar pattern for revenue ballot issues. Working age women / moms are always the most supportive. They like investing in education. They like investing in the future. Younger men tend to come along if they've got enough reassurances that it's a good fiscal conservative deal and you're not just throwing money away, but that you're making a smart investment in the future. Older women tend to come along as well, usually on education, usually on future issues, and older men are the most resistant to raising taxes because they're the ones who are least likely to see a benefit for themselves in it. And that's where you see that 41% who go with Citizen Smith among that group. But the good news is that with enough education, even a majority of the hardest group to persuade come along. So lastly, I've got 3 pages of summary findings to just summarize what you just heard. There's, as I said, and this is all everything I've said, but bullet 1, there's many positive factors in place for the passage of this bond referendum, but you're only going to achieve victory if the electorate can be more informed about the project details, the community value about this investment, its affordable cost, and I think probably the most important, LCCC's solid history of performance on similar projects. It's all about the jobs. It's all about the future. It's all about job skills, and it's all about the fact that this can be done in a fiscally responsible way because that's what LCCC has done in the past. The second bullet on that first page, there's a lot of positive factors that support the mood for this to do well this year. 84% are positive about the local economy, so this could be a factor to keep that good economy going. 63% to 34% say taxes are okay. They're not too high. There's only about 1/3 who are absolute hardcore, in an anti-tax mood. Of course, we still have to convince them that the taxes are reasonable and a good investment and will go away and we'll buy what's promised. But the mood is there to allow that discussion to be held. And then lastly, LCCC has good brand credibility. It's a 90% favorable rating, including half the community who are very favorable to it. On the second page of the findings, but there's a real risk. There's a real risk that this bond referendum would not pass. And again, as I said before, the legal language wording and the difficulty in educating people, about something like this in their busy lives, with limited resources is always a challenge. A bond referendum based on legal wording would fail, and in the poll it fails 48-42. But a ballot description that includes the details of the projects to be built, reasons to build them, and simplifying the cost to taxpayers passed by 21 points more, by 63% yes, just 32% no. And that 32% no, by the way, that 1/3 is equal to the number of people who think taxes are too high. And in fact, after hearing an explanation on the bond, voters expressed slight preference, 46 to 35, to use the bond as a way to pay for these over a shorter property tax that's a little more intense, a shorter period of time. And then lastly, on the last page, voters react extremely positive to a number of pro-bond messages. Again, the successful track record is important. The temporary nature of the tax is important. The value of this as an investment to bring jobs, tax revenues, competitive standing, and economic development is real important. And again, one of the value words to use in that is community. What this will do for the people of the community when it comes to jobs, competitive standing, their future is real important. And then also this other theme, this other message of economic opportunities for children to stay here, our children and grandchildren to stay and live and build a life in Cheyenne and the local community. Then the next last bullet, exposure to the information about the bond is so powerful it generates a consistent 65% plus level of yes vote, even in the face of no tax and other alternatives. And while I didn't write this, I think, probably a real important sort of caveat of that is that a majority of Republicans go along, and they would have to in order to get to 65%, given that close to 60% of the voters are Republican. Bottom line, a bond referendum for LCCC should win, but it would likely fail unless the electorate can be educated on the specifics of LCCC's successful track record, the community value, the return on investment, and the honest impact about this temporary tax increase.
Lisa, would you like to?
So I'll stop talking.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was very well presented, and I certainly understand it now much better than I did before. This is Carol Merrill, the chair. So I really appreciate that. And Lisa, you're in your local team?
Madam Chair, that is the presentation that we have tonight, and Keith is
Perfect.
available for questions. And we have this expert and Todd Bishop as well. So please ask your questions, and hopefully these guys are available. Todd, would you like to please join me here at the podium? And we are available to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I think Kevin has a question.
I do have a question. It's for Mr. Frederick. This is Kevin Kelty. I'm a trustee. And what I take away from this is if this bond is properly worded, we have pretty lopsided poll figures here, but polls are capable of moving. So in your experience, if we were to wait as long as 2 years to bring this bond issue up, would there be much likelihood of numbers these lopsided changing? And if so, what are the danger signals that we should be aware of?
Boy, if I could predict where the world would be 2 years from now, I would be doing what I'm doing. I think the danger, well, first of all, if this is held in an election that coincides with a larger election, a larger statewide election, then I think the turnout changes from what we're looking at in this poll, and that should be a benefit to you because more younger people should vote, more working women, usually vote in those elections than vote in the very low turnout off-year election. So that might be a plus to you. But then again, I don't know what happens to the housing market. I don't know what happens to people's, sense of security and disposable income, whether they're still so bullish about the economy, as they are right now. So I don't know, but if with the oil and gas world drop, bottom falls out, if there's significant negative, some kind of terrible natural weather event that happens that gets people bad economic shock, those kind of things could hurt the chances of this. You never know, but if some people derive some perception through some coverage, something happens that the community college is not run well or not fiscally managed well, that could hurt too, because that's a big huge pillar here of support when people learn about previous bond performance.
So I take it what you're saying is that our principal risks are really economic ones.
Yeah, ones that you just can't project, yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Mosier?
This is Ed Mosier. I just wondered, this poll and everything was taken in the context of being the only bond issue out there. Do you have any feeling for whether or not, or how it would be impacted if there were other issues relating to taxes or other bonding issues at the time? And again, that's probably like Kevin's question. It's a little bit of a wild ballpark there, but to me, these questions are asked with the assumption, I assume, that this is the only thing out for voting.
Yeah, I have to go more on my experience than based necessarily on this poll, but my experience is that it's a very good question because it generally hurts to have multiple questions asking for tax increases on the ballot, that voters can get worn out. But it also makes it imperative on the community college to separate itself out and use its unique messaging that it has about its track record, about the return of the community, about the need, the need for the kind of skills that we're going to be providing in the investment that can separate it from other bond issues. But I have seen examples where 4, 5, or 6 tax increases all at once and they all lose. But I've also seen examples where 4 or 5 tax increases and 4 of them lose and 1 or 2 of them pass. Voters are able to pick out what they want. Rarely, unless you're in a very democratic, liberal environment, do you see all 6 of them pass. And that happens.
I see Todd Bishop shaking his head. Would you like to speak to that?
Madam Chair, I might just add a couple of thoughts that go to Mr. Kilty's comments. Trying to predict where we might be in 2 years or what the feeling of the electorate might be at that time. I mean, a few of the knowns, a few of the things that we do know right now is that, interest rates, we have a pretty good feel for where they are today. 2 years, we might not know where they are. Today we're at arguably historic lows. So if we have to borrow money, it might not be a bad time to do it. So we do know that. As far as competing issues, other things that might be on the ballot, well, we know we recently passed a specific purpose tax election, so we know we won't have that to compete against. I have not heard of any rumblings out there from either School District 2 or School District 1 for a possible competing bond issue at either an August or a November election 2 years from now. Hard to say what might come up, and those would be things that we certainly wouldn't want to be out there competing and having voters, maybe making a decision to choose LCCC over maybe one of those other projects. So I think those are just a couple of the things that we do know right now. But I think, as Keith pointed out in his presentation, the bottom line is that we, like when the Health Science Center was presented, we have to go out and do a good job of educating people about what's proposed, how much is it going to cost, and how is it going to benefit LCCC and our kids. I think that truly is the bottom line.
Thank you, Todd. Trustee Erickson?
This is Don Erickson. Mr. Frederick, I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the survey. One, how many of the people that you contacted did not want to take the survey?
I can get you that answer in writing. Let me find out for sure.
Okay.
I didn't make. We subcontract with a phone center, so I will get the answer to that rather than try to make one up for you right now.
Okay. Another question that has to do with the demographics. You have information as to the 300 that responded as to their location in the county, as to whether it's rural or urban.
we'll find out. I can make that available.
And I have another question. In regard to the negatives, did you do any analysis of who the negatives were by demographics, by either urban, rural, Democrat, Republican?
Yeah. Actually, it's a pretty small group of people, but it's a little bit more independent, and it's also more older male and Republicans, older male Republicans, and some independents, and some people who are lower income, and I'm getting that from lesser education, which is usually associated with that, lesser educated folks. People only have a high school. Or those are kind of most of the people that load up in the negative.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lisa, anything you would like to say? Or Vice President Murphy?
Well, nice, Madam Chair. We have been working with the Development Committee of the Foundation Board, and I just wanted to report to you that we have their full support with whatever direction the Board of Trustees gives us. And I know that Dr. Schaefer is, of course, ready for your direction, so I would turn it over to Dr. Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Keith, Todd, Lisa, we appreciate all of this. Keith, we don't want to keep you on the phone any longer this late into the evening unless there are other questions from the trustees or any others. We'll go ahead and sign off, but thank you for the time tonight and the presentation. There may be some follow-up questions we'll route through Lisa to you, but we sure appreciate the time and the presentation.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you for being involved. Appreciate it.
Great. Have a good night. Madam Chair, I would like to hear your discussion and direction. I can tell you there are, again, still the same things that we are under there. In terms of context, there are feasibly, to meet our timelines for these projects, we could either go to the voters in a special election this fall or in the general election 2 years from now. So those are both options. I think we've outlined the costs associated with those. In the general election, there'll be a lower cost. Special election, we anticipate somewhere around $75,000, $80,000. Mm-hmm. The results in the poll, I don't think I need to expand on what was presented here. The crystal ball perspective of will we stay this favorable as we move forward? I sure hope so. Do I think that interest rates are going to fluctuate so vastly that we can't say interest rates are good? No, I don't think so, but boy, I'm not the one that has the expertise to really say that. It's really a strategic decision. I'll tell you, when I first saw these results and had the conversations with Lisa, I was thinking, let's make a run at it. Now's the time. There's momentum, there's purpose. I think the messaging can be developed, especially after these results, and I could certainly support that. But I'm not opposed to a prudent approach either, where that says let's keep the message consistency. Let's look at that general election, and if in general we may get a more favorable response with more time, maybe we can make a better case. And so the only time sensitive issue with this, if I were to say, is the fact that we've agreed to not ask the state for dollars for the Flex Tech building, which means that if we're waiting until 2014, that's an extra year in which we could actually be moving forward on the flexible tech building, assuming we raise the additional revenue from private gifts and contributions. And so that may be the one downside. It will actually could delay the flexible technology building. But those are just some thoughts off the top of my head. I'd certainly love to hear conversation and feedback from you as trustees.
Dr. Kilkey.
I'd like to ask a question of Todd, just to refresh my memory. But once we would get approval to sell these bonds, when would that approval expire? How long would we have to actually initiate the sale of the bonds then? We don't have to start immediately. We wouldn't have to start in November.
No, Madam Chair, to Mr. Kilty's question, no. Once you receive that authorization from the voters, there's not a finite time limit in which you have to do the project. you really, you receive that authorization, and if you didn't need all of those funds, for example, say you were going to phase the projects and you only needed to issue $10 million in that, next building season, you would have that flexibility, and then come back and do a second issuance when you needed the funds.
In view of that answer, and in view of the fact that everything is so positive right now, and interest rates are low, and, we don't know what's in the future, but it's probably not a bad guess to say that the near future is going to be a lot like the present. I'd say we should do this in November. I can't see any reason for delaying it.
Trustee?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
my feeling is the same as Dr. Kilde's, but I'd like to, going back to 40-plus years, the first time they brought up LCCC to have LCCC, it went down. And then the next year they brought it back, and after educating the public, it passed, and we have this fine institution. So my question is, let's do it now, but we've really got to push educating the public the first time so that, and be ready to answer questions that are brought up regarding all this, because there are a lot of people out there that, including people I have coffee with every morning, who are negative beyond belief. And it's got to be explained to that kind of person why this is important.
What are they drinking in that coffee?
Just
Not the right stuff.
not the right stuff is right. No, I really mean it. I agree that we should move now, but I really feel that, boy, education is going to be very, very important. And Lisa, I suppose that's going to be, Vice President Murphy, that's going to be your duty, along with all of us helping you.
Madam Chairman and Trustee Dubois, you make the best point. I think I had the privilege of working on the health science bond election, and I'll tell you the thing that has been keeping me up at nights recently is thinking about the things that we would need to do to make this all happen. But I'll tell you the thing that has inspired me about it is that when we work on projects like this, we all come together. And it gives us something to work on together to continue building this college. It will be a lot of work, but it will be a lot of fun. And we know that we need it. We know that we need to continue growing it. And you're exactly right. If this Board of Trustees decides to move forward with it, we will need for every one of you to be all in. And if you're out with your friends at coffee and you convince every one of them to go and vote, if every one of you does that, if you all convince your spouses and friends and all of our employees vote and all of our students vote, and we get our foundation board on, I really think we can make this happen. So I'm excited about it. I've been a little bit nervous. We have great financial advisors and we have great support. So I'm nervous but excited about the opportunity. So if the Board of Trustees gives us that direction, I assure you that we have experience in this area. We made it work for health sciences. And we did it with a lot less support. And I say that because Kaiser and Company reminded us that we only had about a dozen people. Mm-hmm. And we have all agreed that we're going to have about 50 to really work on the committees and work on planning. And we're already developing our steering committee. So we're ahead of this. We're ahead of what we did, and we passed the health science building. So I assure you that if you give us that direction, we will get behind it and we'll make it happen. So thank you, Trustee Dubois, for understanding that it will take everyone in this room and another 50 and another 50 and another 50. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Trustee Erickson?
One thing this survey points out is the very strong need for public education.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. Now, we're not going to be able to get the ballot to be the way we want it. It's going to be the legalese of the way the government requires it to be. So it's not going to be a good statement. It's going to be a statement of some sort, but it's not going to say the things that we'd like it to say. So we're going to have to do a great deal of public information. My question is, are we prepared to do that within the next 6 months? Are we capable with the resources that we have to get to the entire county. As I said once before, we have 61 precincts in this county. And I don't know where these 300 people live. In fact, 300 is a very small sample. You know, it's a snapshot of one point in time last week in January. And those 300 people, and I don't know how many, I asked the question is, okay, how many didn't want to respond? There's a number of questions here that I would like to have some more information about. But I think we definitely have to have a very well put together public information campaign that is countywide. It's not just the employees, the faculty, the trustees, the college graduates from LCCC and so forth. And we've got to get out and beat the bushes. Now, if we think we can do that in the next 6 months, well, then we should go forward. So right now, I'm still not convinced that we should do it at a special election. I'm convinced we should go forward, but I'm not sure we should go forward in November. I'm open. I think we need to have a little more information. It's kind of like that House Bill 105. There needs to be a lot more information about the consequences of that type of a law. I know this is not analogous, but I think there's a little bit more information we need to have. And I'm pleased with Vice President Murphy's comment that she's excited, and that's good. I think I'm excited. I think we're all excited. I don't think there's anyone here that doesn't want to move forward as quickly as we can.
Thank you. Lisa, you had something else to say?
Madam Chair and Trustee Erickson, we do have a strategy book and a plan, and I would be happy to meet with you before the business meeting if you would like to go through it. And you are on our steering committee along with Trustee Merrill and Bill DuBois, because you are members of our foundation board. So if you would like to meet, I would be happy to go through you with that book, and we can discuss the plan as quickly as you would like.
Trustee Mosier?
3 questions I'm interested in. One, I think Dr. Schaefer is partially answered there, and that has to do with the partnership. One of these facilities, the Flex Tech, hinges in part on that, and we're then also caught up with the Student Services facility, which has another partnership, but a different one in terms of UW and the costs associated with that. So I'm kind of caught a little bit here. How confident are we in the partnership, both in terms of industry and being able to raise those funds? What happens if it takes us longer? I'm assuming the bond, as was answered earlier, could be sold later. We don't have to push that too quickly. In terms of UW and how that is working with them and with the state in terms of capital construction, whether we're caught in any, does that give us a little better time advantage if we go with the earlier election? And finally, the amount, the $20 million, how comfortable are we at this point, and how soon would we, if we're not comfortable with that amount, have to make adjustments and look maybe at whether it be a plus or a minus to that?
Wow. I was just going to say that the 20 million, I think, was just a hypothetical figure used in this survey, right?
Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, I actually believe the original amount we had anticipated for this was 18 million, 5 associated with the flexible technology building, 13 representing the half of the university student center. The 20 million, I believe, was a mark that we did to consider that there may be additional costs associated with that. If it passes, the cost of the election, the cost of issuing the bonds, and I suppose some generous rounding up based on our financial advisor's desire to see us be successful with this. But it's close enough. I don't know if that's what we would ask. In fact, there's been folks who have suggested that perhaps we ask even for slightly more than that, based on all the other things that are going on. But yeah, I think that could be considered and in flux. To answer part of your questions, Trustee Mosier, we will know more about the specific cost estimates as we complete the level 2 planning for the University and Student Center, which is ramping up right now. And so certainly by the time we're getting into the messaging, our hope is that we'll have that process well underway and even further, so that when people ask specifically about programming costs, want to see the visuals and things like that, we will be along the way on that. In regards to the university, you'll have an opportunity at our business meeting? Yes, at dinner at our business meeting to ask Dr. Buchanan some of those questions, recognizing that he is retiring and we don't know necessarily the position of his successor. I do know that others in executive positions at the university support this. Our general agreement has been that this will be an LCCC-led project, and when it comes time to support that, we'll have their support, but they will not play a role in any of the requests for state funds and any of the capital construction considerations, just as they've agreed to move forward with the LCCC campus on the UW campus as their project. They want our support, but they will shepherd that process. It will be them advancing it through the legislative issues and the securing the funding. We believe that that's clear, and in many ways, for at least our facility, a recognition that, well, UW has a significant component in that facility. It is not by any means the major component or the focus of that facility. So I do think that they will support that. We can ask Dr. Buchanan that question again, but that's the assumption and the guidance that I've been working under. And then the last question that I think you asked was, how confident are we in raising the other $5 million for the Flex Tech building from private funds? Other than anecdotally to say I'm confident, I can't give you a firm answer at that point. You know, we have the opportunity, and I have been, it's been suggested to me that, you know, let's just have the community fund it all. I don't believe that that's probably the right approach. This facility is designed to support a growing industry and an anticipated future industry. I think we have an opportunity to receive private gifts as a result of that facility and its target focus. In many ways, our ability to respond with welding and process technology and the expansion of the CTE building and all that stuff may be a great entree for us to say, look, we've responded, we're already doing this, we're going to do more, but you need the help. So I still have full interest and anticipation that we'll proceed with seeking private gifts for that other half of that project. But there's a lot of details from there. We could, as part of the bond election, build in and ask for $22 million, but know that we don't want to use that other $2. We're going to raise $5. But if we raise $3, you know, you may say, well, let's proceed with that. I mean, I think we've got some flexibility yet in how we structure all of these things. But I hope I answered all your questions.
Yes, and I would just say that I really support us moving ahead with this, understanding that there are still some questions to be answered, some decisions to be made on that. And as far as special elections, 75,000, with what we're looking at, I don't, especially with the fact that if you wait 2 years, conditions can change, there could be competition on that ballot. I think that's a reasonable fee to look at. It's not cheap, but I think relative to the total cost, I think it makes sense. To me, anyway.
Trustee Erickson.
Madam Chair, Dr. Joe, I had the good fortune of attending the Wyoming Community College Commission meeting today, learning a lot of hoops that community colleges have to jump through. And we have to have approval for this particular construction that we're looking at. And given that, and then the question about the timing with getting the approval from the state legislature for these projects, and then going forward with a bond issue, I suspect that you're looking at going for the approval of from the state before, no, after the special election, if the special election were occurring in October. Okay. Do we have to have approval for the construction of these two buildings by the Community College Commission prior to the election?
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, no, not prior to the election is the simple answer. The long and convoluted answer that I'll be happy to discuss with you when we have some more time is it is an incredibly complex system of when and what parts go to the Commission for approval, what parts then advance to the State Building Commission, through the governor to the legislature, and so it is a somewhat convoluted process that requires great deal in planning. Fortunately, we've done that planning, and for both of these projects, in regards to the capital construction process and modeling, the authority through the commission, working with construction management, we're on track with both of them, essentially moving through those processes. I think you received one of these, and if you look for at the bottom of each project, there is a timeline that sort of illustrates the pieces that need to be done and when they need to be done. There is one thing that's for certain: before the legislature will appropriate construction dollars, well, I shouldn't say it, before the legislature will authorize the distribution of construction dollars, we must have the local match in hand for any projects. And that was our big concern going into the discussion of trying to determine when to hold this election. Our concern was if we waited for 2 years, we will have missed the process in which the projects were advanced to construction management, which happens in October of that year of 2014. But since it only requires authorization before the legislature actually distributes those funds, and the legislature won't convene until the spring of 2015, we believe that we're in line regardless of which approach. But it's a very difficult process, and we had to start last year essentially to hopefully occupy the University Student Center in 2016, and there are a lot of steps that we have to go through, but we are on track and moving through those, and I'll do my best to explain that process to you offline if you'd like.
Thank you.
Okay, what I'm hearing is general approval, and I think there's time between now and our next meeting to have some.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
you're hearing, you say general approval of what?
No, I'm saying that between now and our next board meeting, we will have time for more education. And I'm hearing that Lisa and Todd and anyone who has knowledge, Joe, can educate each of us or in small groups, and then we will be prepared to take a vote at the next board meeting.
Okay, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for that clarification. That was a question I was going to ask. To move forward with this type of activity, it's really, I believe, up to you and the trustees to decide. Do you want to take formal action and endorse moving forward? Do you want to just say, keep plowing ahead? Yeah, we'll go with that without formal action. I think there's value and power in actually making a statement as a board, but we'll need that guidance, and what we'll be looking for is sort of that affirmative. So I would encourage you to take action. I don't know that you need to, but just so you know that would help us see, is this the direction that we want to go?
And I think that's what I was hearing, that we need a little more education. We need more bringing us up to what we would totally have a clear understanding of our formal vote if we decide to go in that direction at our next meeting. Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to conclude this by saying he who hesitates is lost.
Thank you, Trustee Du Bois. Yes, Butch.
Madam Chair, is there any way maybe you could have some sort of document for the wording for this such bond issue that you could look at to kind of see, at your next business meeting, just to see how difficult it might be to work with?
Oh, Madam Chair, okay, I was thinking, I was going to say, we have plenty of time to actually craft the bond language and ask for the bond. That doesn't have to happen until June, is that correct, Todd?
Madam Chair,
question?
yes.
Okay.
The formal resolution calling for an actual bond election wouldn't have to be passed by the trustees. I believe till August would be the sort of the drop dead date. Of course, we'd want to have everything crafted long before that, but certainly we could develop some sample bond questions, and even look at some of the historical questions that LCCC has used, as well as some of the other colleges around the state. And it is legalese that's in those questions, unfortunately, just as a requirement, aggregate bond principal amount, maximum term with the bonds can be issued, maximum interest rate that they cannot exceed. It's really, I think, challenging to develop a bond question that includes or something to the effect that it's only going to be less than a Starbucks every month in the tax question itself. But we'd be happy to work with you to provide you with some samples, and maybe we can massage that a little bit to make it a little more user-friendly.
Great, thanks. And Madam Chair, members of the board, and I think that's what you were suggesting, but can we look at some samples of what it might look like early enough?
Well, it just seems like the survey really focused on the legalese. It fails if you don't do the education. If we kind of look at what we're up against as far as the legalese is for the educational effort.
Sure.
Thank you for bringing that up, Butch. I'm excited about this project because I've heard of the three of us who are on the foundation board have heard about it already, and I think you've done a lot of work, a lot of good work, and I think that we are wanting to move in that direction with more education. Lisa?
Madam Chair, I would also be happy to bring maybe a one-page summary sheet of some of the activities that we will be putting together for some of the educational items, and that may give the board some comfort in some of the things that we'll be planning in our strategy as well.
Sure.
So now that I know that you're having this discussion and moving in this direction, I can bring something for you for your next meeting to look at.
That would be helpful.
Madam
Trustee
Chair.
Mosier?
The discussion has brought up another question in my mind related to timelines. And I hear Lisa talking about the potential activities that are going to take place. And I guess I'm wondering a little bit as to when we need to have passed the motion. Do we need to have something formally done the next session, given some of what I've heard here? And secondly, if we do, could we look at kind of a timeline of committee formations and so forth, and as to when those are going to occur, so we could kind of look ahead at those tasks?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, I'll look to Lisa and Todd, but certainly what I would propose, if there are specific things, we will get the information that Trustee Erickson asked about in terms of location within the county of the respondents to the survey. But if there are specific things that you would like further education on at this point, let us know and we'll bring that forward. We'll come forward with an action item at your business meeting moving forward. But I think there are two steps here. One is yes, let's proceed with the intent to call a bond election, and then we'll actually have to do that. You'll have to call that pass the resolution to do the bond election in the summer sometime. There's nothing saying that as we move forward, well, I think we have the capacity and we're ready to move forward, and we'll share with you timelines of the campaign and the status and everything. If something goes awry, there's nothing that restricts us from saying, look, we're just not going to call it in August. We'll wait and keep going on the process we're going. But if you have the intention to have us move ahead with this with the intent of doing a special election, we need to get moving right away. So yes, we'll bring a timeline, we'll bring the idea and the components of the campaign. Perhaps we'll bring some draft language of what it might look like on the ballot, and anything else that you would like us to bring for educational purposes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just a quick follow-up there. There must be a drop-dead date as to when we have to notify that we want a special election.
Madam Chair, yes, there is. I believe I've failed to have the statutes in front of me, but I believe it's the last week in August when we would actually the board would need to pass that resolution and have it to the county clerk. Any time prior to that would be fine, with formal notice.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Thank you for coming, Lisa, Todd, and George. And
We didn't give George a chance to talk.
George, would you like to say something?
No, I'm just here listening.
Well, we always want to hear from you.
The foundation, if I can just quickly, the foundation board as a whole is supportive of the issue. And we have started doing our committees to to bring the issue down the line. And so we formed a steering committee. We're starting the steering committee, and we will bring specifics, timeline for Trustee Erickson and stuff. We'll have that all lined out. Probably not the next meeting, but we'll hope to have it within the 30 days.
Thank you, George. Okay, we're going to move along to our next item on the agenda, which is the welding pilot program. And that will be presented by Dr. Schaefer and Vice President Stan Torvik.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context again for this request and lay I think what would be the path for how we want to proceed with this, especially given the action of the Wyoming Community College Commission today. So as you recall, you approved at your last business meeting to move forward with the project to expand the Career and Technical Education Center, the 2,000 square feet. I believe at that time you said that, of course, is contingent on your approval of the program we intend to put in there. The commission today also approved the expansion of that facility, again contingent upon the approval of the welding program as a pilot program. And according to the Wyoming Community College Commission rules, the pilot program process allows us to essentially fast track the ramp up of a program by going through the Academic Affairs Council of the Commission and then to the Program Review Council of the Commission. And then we have authority to run that program for 2 years. Before that 2 years is up, we have to go through the full formal approval process through the commission to get formal approval of that. If we do not, then the program becomes null and void. As I suggested last time, we would like to look at the same mechanism, although I don't think we have one, a mechanism to formally do this yet at LCCC, but essentially ask you to do the same thing, approve this program at your business meeting later this month as a pilot, and then within the 2 years go through the full formal process of vetting, and hopefully by then we'll have better processes for the vetting of the programs, and that will allow us to expand the facility, ramp up the program, ensure that the needs that we anticipate do show themselves, and interest and all that good stuff shows itself. So I just wanted to provide that context because that is the way that the Commission acted today in regards to our facilities. We have commitment from Dr. Joe McCann, who administers the academic affairs elements of the Commission, to help us move the pilot process forward. Dr. Jim Rose, the Executive Director, believes that that's the most appropriate path for this type of project as well. So with that, I wanted to just give you that context as we open this conversation. You have in your materials the curriculum request form that gives you the information. This is the form that the Commission requires, and I know that many of you, including you, Dr. Kilty, want to see a better process for this, and I promised you, and we're working on the curriculum development approval process that will be more robust, develop more to look like a business plan, and probably get at more information that you would be after. This is the format we've been using as a legacy format. It's there, and then you also have employment projections regarding this field as we move forward. So instead of taking up additional time, I'd really like to hear your discussion and questions.
Trustee Kelty.
A quick point of clarification. I think when I made an amendment to the motion in our last business meeting, that I said that it was contingent not on the welding program, but on whatever program would be housed in there. I wanted maximum flexibility while still maintaining that contingency. So that was just a point of information. We're just free to begin questioning.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask, why no business plan? I thought I made it really clear at the January meeting that I wanted to see a real business plan, and in my mind that would suggest sources of what you project as sources of revenue, what you're going to how you're going to use that revenue. I'd like to know if it's going to require subsidies from the current fund, and in how much, for how long. When I say sources of revenue, I really mean who's going to end up paying for this? Is there are we relying on FTEs from the state? Are we relying on local taxes? tuition and fees? Is there other government money involved in this, and so forth? The other thing I'd like to know is where the students coming from and where are they likely to end up when we're done. Now, one of the things I'm curious about, why are U.S. numbers included in your projections? Are they really pertinent to this? They really aren't.
You know, Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, it sort of depends. It's an analysis that allows us to look at trends across the nation, and you'll see there's really 3 different levels of analyses in the information that we've provided. One is U.S., and that's a reflection truly of what's happening within the industry in regards to welders. Would we, is it appropriate for us to consider that if a graduate from LCCC ends up going to Colorado or somewhere else in the U.S., is it good outcome or bad outcome? I think that's, you know, something that we still have yet to debate. That's not the focus of it. It's to help us drill down and look at, is the trend, is the need really localized to Wyoming or to a part of Wyoming? Is it something that we're seeing across the nation? And so it's a first level of filter, and that's why we provided it, but, you know, not the critical filter.
Madam Chair, I think what surprised me, and I was really a little bit baffled when I began looking at this stuff this morning, but the projections in here show almost no demand in our service area. I mean, they show almost no demand. They show the Cheyenne area. I don't remember 4 over. Well, that's 4 openings in the Cheyenne area in 2021, but the numbers are really pretty consistent. The latest figures that you sent us show a 10-year job openings in Wyoming of 90. Somewhere else they show about 110. Really, we're looking at numbers of 9 and 10 per year, state of Wyoming wide, in a state that has a welding program at every community college. Plus, I noticed that one of the things I'd like to see in a business plan is who else is competition here. There's local competition. There's somebody starting some sort of a private welding school in the area that's a graduate of Vetter's operation up in Torrington, and then Vetter tells me he's very capable person, well connected, especially in the pipeline industry. Does Wyotech have a welding program? Do we know that even? That's within our service area?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, a couple of comments there. We're aware of the private startup that will be doing welding. I don't know of the details, and I may ask Vice President Torvik if he does, at what magnitude. I'm not aware if Wyotech does welding or not. Stan's shaking his head no. There is, as part of the McMurray Training Center in Casper, an organization that does welding there. It's run by the Wyoming Contractors Association, and incidentally, I had lunch with those folks last week, and they said that's their strongest program right now. So there are others, and every other community college does. Just to clarify, though, on the job projections from the Wyoming occupational projections from the Department of Workforce Services through 2021, it actually projects that there will be almost 220 annual openings across the state. 209 that are specifically welders, cutters, welders, and brazers, and then welding, soldering, brazing, machine setters, operators, and tenders, another 11. So statewide, you're going to have, it's anticipating 210 annual openings. If every college and McMurray produces 15 graduates a year, you're not going to satisfy that need. And that's not taking into account the numbers that leave from Gillette or Eastern and head to the Bakken or other areas. But to your point, yes, indeed, and I highlighted that in the Cheyenne metropolitan statistical area, the projections show 4. If you include the central southeast region, which it sort of broadens us to look at Laramie and other areas, it goes up slightly, and it suggests that there will be 31 annual openings within that region. I don't know how much Eastern fills that or Casper fills that need. But this is one of those cases where we truly are anticipating an emerging need for welders in our areas, and we can wait for it to come and then ramp this up and then be 2 years out before we provide our first graduates, or we pilot and try to anticipate that need. On the last page of this information, you'll see current employers and new and potential employers. And I want to just draw your attention. I received a call from Randy Bruns from Leeds. They're working with a company right now, and there's a strong indication that they will relocate from Colorado Springs to Cheyenne. And they're looking at employing between 50 and 100 welders initially out the gate. In fact, one of their largest concerns about locating in Cheyenne, and according to Leeds, is that there is an availability of workforce, and they would have to try to pull these people from other programs across the state. And so I'll fully admit we're trying to anticipate an emerging need, not a current need. Do I think our graduates would get jobs? Oh, without a doubt, and probably even in Wyoming. Do I think that they will be in Cheyenne immediately? Well, I guess we'll see if these companies actually come forward and set up like they've committed to.
Well, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the questions I had was that if one of these potential employers were to show up, what time scale are we talking about? And they would need these employees basically right away, and how could we ramp up? And I just referred to the last page here, and it said 3 to 4 months relocation time, and if they need 50 to 100 employees, we aren't even out the door at that point. So they're going to get those employees somewhere else. So that's, if they're really going to relocate in that time, we can't count them as demand for these graduates, really, unless it's just for replacement of their employees. But so that was one thing I was going to bring up. There was this discussion of some supplies and equipment budget back in January, and the amount bandied about at that time was $100,000. Gosh, the IST program has a $60,000 annual supplies budget. A welding program goes through supplies like mad. You know, that's not adequate, and that's one of the reasons why I'd like to see a business plan.
Sure.
I want to see what's going on there.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Dr. Kilty, the $100,000 is actually startup expenditures with acquiring the equipment for the welding stations, not the operating expenditures that would be associated with the program. I believe we were looking at using current funds not appropriated for about half of that. Half of that would come from Perkins dollars for the equipment. But yes, indeed, there will be an operating budget that would have to be associated with this program. There would be faculty associated with this program, and those would come from a mixtures of revenues from both general fund, student fees, and from tuition. And we can certainly do that, and perhaps if the board is willing to allow you to sort of take the lead on that, you know, I'd love to sit down and sort of get a better idea of the specific elements in the business plan that you would like, and we can do our best to put that information together and certainly incorporate it into the future model of how we develop and bring curriculum before you for approval.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
What do you? I looked a little bit in the submission for the commission here, but it wasn't clear to me what you were planning for staff and faculty. Are you talking about just one faculty person at this point, or is there going to be a director and other staff?
Vice President Torvik, I'll take a stab at it, but then clarify if I miss here. Looking at similar programs around the state and ramping up, and assuming we'll have the first year students in and not a second year, at least in the first year, I'm assuming we'll have to have one full-time faculty that would also serve the role of program director, and we would most likely hire a few adjunct to fill in the instructional elements around the program for essentially 15 students. I don't know that it would need to scale past that, and because this is a pilot program, especially for the full-time faculty, those would be temporary year-plus-year hires.
That is correct.
May I jump in, give you a little breath?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm not really tired, you understand?
I understand.
We have a whole list.
I know you're just getting going.
We have a whole list.
Madam Chair, as a new trustee, I'm really pleased that we have these study sessions. Because what's good about the study session, you can ask questions, you can make your concerns, and you don't have to be saying you're speaking for it or against it. You're just raising the various concerns that we have to have come to us before we actually vote on it at our business meeting. One question I have, Dr. Joe, would the pilot period, the 2-year pilot period, include the associate degree as well as a certificate?
Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, Ideally, yes. If you went through the curriculum or the commission approval form, you'll see that this is actually what we call a stackable credential or stackable program. The first year could be a stop-out point for a certificate, on to the second year for the Associate of Applied Science. All things perfect and all things planned, we would hope and intend that those students that went through the first year, we would get the majority of them back for the second year. In fact, we believe it's the completion of the Associate of Applied Science degree that will lead toward the more advanced levels of qualification, industry certification. That is ultimately what these employers have told us that they're asking for. That said, we go through the first year and we get 12 students or 15 students and we have no companies, no jobs being asked for, none of those things. We may give them the opportunity to finish out if so desired and just close the program down. If it's looking promising, the jobs are there, the companies are starting to show up, we move forward with it, they could go all the way through the associate degree. I think in the pilot process, since it's a 2-year process, in the best case scenario, yes, a student could complete the Associate of Applied Science degree, but that second year will be somewhat in flux as we evaluate the overall efficacy of the program.
And that was my concern for those students that were going for the associate degree, that they wouldn't be shut down because by some possibility the community college would say, excuse me, the Wyoming Community College Commission, get all these names. I mean, you got so many different language things you got to learn in this business, but it seems to me that you don't want to leave these students in a lurch, so that if the WCCC did not approve the extension beyond the pilot.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Erickson, it is my understanding that the pilot would allow them to finish, and in fact, our commitment to them, if they so choose to declare the associate degree, would be that we would do everything we could to get them through the program. We have some outs, if there aren't resources available, those types of things. But that would be our intent, is to move them through the associate degree if we decided we're just not going to continue that.
Thank you, Joe. Dr.
Carol?
Kelty? Oh,
Madam Chair.
Trustee Mosier?
A few questions here, and I'll come back. You've answered the one in terms of temporary folks for the temporary full-time position there. But in talking with the person who developed this program at Gillette College, this program was designed with focus on the mines and the needs for the type of welding they have in the mines. In addition, there were MOUs that were used with those folks, along with a very strong advisory committee, and that advisory committee really set out what the expectations were, and that was necessary for having people who are qualified coming out of that program could be hired. I'm just, when I look at this, I'm not sure when you hire this welder who's going to be the instructor. Some of those folks, in particular, you might wind up with somebody who has the credentials we talk about now. If they had a master's, they're probably a younger fellow. They're going to have more of the engineering background. And they're probably not going to have necessarily the level of experience in the field that we want. So the adjunct would probably, if you could get them, if they'd worked for it, some old character who's got the experience, who's got a lot of gray. And that might work well, but then you have to be careful, because if your full-time instructor there is going to have experience that's focused either on pipe welding, or they're going to be more focused on different types of welding for industry. And so those programs tend to be focused on specific areas, and the expertise of those folks, along with the equipment that you're going to get, has unique characteristics for the different types of industry that you're working with. So I'm a little concerned about, on one hand, it's an excellent curriculum. On the other hand, is it the curriculum that we need? And that's a concern for me, because we don't have an MOU with any of these folks who are looking to come here and potentially hire these folks. And one of these potential companies, I think, that would have significant opportunities for our people would be in pipe welding. And so, then we lock out some of the other areas that we might focus on. So I'm just concerned about those issues. Advisory committee, we don't have any MOUs, and I'm not sure the availability of folks out there. Plus, do we have any equipment now? Do we have any welding equipment now?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Trustee Mosier, I'll start, and then Stan's going to have to help me on this one for sure. We do have some welding. In fact, we acquired a welding simulator, which happens to be one of the major advancements in welding education and what they're doing now. The Carly Perkins funds helped us acquire that, and I think it's on site.
It is.
Yeah, it's on site. So we do. Do we have the additional welder? No, we did not want to move forward with the acquisition of those until we actually had indication that the program would move forward. To the curriculum, Stan can tell you about the background of the curriculum. Having started welding programs in Montana now, I can't say I'm a welder, but I can tell you enough about the background. This curriculum is designed around welding processes, not necessarily welding materials. And it's the materials that sometimes dictate the process, but also really adhere with the industry. And so as we look at the industry coming in, we've heard about large steel tank fabrication, and so there's a structural element with large pieces of steel and sometimes structural steel. The processes that we teach could be applied to that, and the activities and the coursework and the things that we do could be tailored to that specifically. But there is not a specific structural welding course in this curriculum, although it could be a component of these process coursework. That could always be added, and I would anticipate that some of the curriculum will modify over time. We do the basic pipe welding, recognizing that that's a need. Is that enough? Will that get them to the qualification? I think there will be some flux, and it will be somewhat influenced over the life of this program by the industries we serve and as we build those relationships. But Stan, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the history of why Gillette Curricula, the folks you've been working with, and how we form advisory boards, and ultimately what you believe will be the long-term curriculum as it goes forward. I do want to make one more point that I remembered. Just for clarification, with the minimum faculty qualifications, an individual with a baccalaureate degree would be qualified to teach in this program. And so I don't know that we will necessarily get a young person with an advanced master's degree. We could, but I think there is a broad range of individuals who might be qualified to be that full-time faculty member when we're all said and done. However the instructional configuration works out, my guess is we'll have a pretty broad range with that. So, Stan?
Yeah, Trustee Mosier, there are 4 basic kinds of welding, and they're incorporated in all of the welding programs in the state that seek national certification for their graduates, and this would be done as well. We have a very close working relationship with Gillette College and a number of other areas. They have modified their welding program over time so that it is not exclusive to the extraction industry anymore, and they're increasingly dealing with pipeline, which is of interest to us. Also in structural welding that has to do with the construction of oil storage tanks, and that's one of the companies that is indicating a plan to move to Cheyenne. And so that would be very specific to the kinds of things that we're looking at. Another of the companies that is planning a location here would be building steel towers, as well as the possibility of wind turbine towers. And that requires another relatively specialized type of welding that Gillette College has some experience with as well, because of the power lines that go through that area up there. All of the welding programs in the state use a similar curriculum. There's like one course difference from among them all. So there's not significant differences.
Madam Chair, just something hit me when you say a company coming here to build wind turbine towers, and yet we've seen they laid off half their labor force. Is that a different entity south of us here in Colorado?
It is, and those incidentally they're in the process of rehiring those. Now you're speaking of Vestas in Colorado.
Yes.
And the tax was extended for 1 more year. Any projects that are initiated, as we understand it right now, during 2013 will be eligible for the tax exemption for a decade. We're expecting that all of these companies are going to move forward. The large player is the Anschutz wind turbine farm that is proposed for just south of Rollins, Wyoming. And he has indicated, Mr. Anschutz himself has indicated that he plans to proceed with that, whether or not there's a production tax credit or not. And so we anticipate that. The unfortunate part, and the unfortunate thing that we're dealing with, is we're dealing with companies that say this is going to be our demand, this is our intent. They have not been able to, or are unwilling at this point, to tell us hard numbers. And our concern is that if we wait until the demand is here, it's too late, because we cannot produce welders for at least 1 year. And if we wish them to complete an associate's degree, it's a 2-year wait. And we're trying to be ahead of the curve. Leads, Department of Workforce Services, everyone we talk to tells us that there is going to be a significant demand for these. You better be ready. And then when we get to the specifics, it gets much more questionable. And we are uneasy about this as well.
Just follow up on, have you approached any of these folks with an MOU? And secondly, where do we stand on formalizing an advisory committee?
We're waiting to, as soon as the board decides that they would like to proceed with this, we will be forming an advisory group. We have potential members already in mind. We have not pulled that together at this point. That can happen very quickly.
As you pull those together, I would appreciate it if maybe you would, there's a couple of folks that I think would do an excellent job for you in that advisory.
Absolutely.
One's an international person who happens to live in the community and is built all over the world and has expertise. The other one, I would hope you're considering some kind of attachment with the public schools, whether it be through District 1 and 2. I don't know if 2 has a welding instructor, but 1 does.
1 does, and we've already been in contact with them and had discussions with them about that. They are very enthusiastic about this because they have a very small program, relatively speaking, in terms of numbers that they can serve, and they have a small population that they do serve, high school students. And so they're seeing a need for further education for their high school graduates, where they're going to go next.
Thank you, Ed. Trustee Kelty?
Yeah, I want to come back to this this business plan for a second, Joe. And I'd written down 3 things here that I think would be good to aim for, but I've thought of a 4th along the way here. First of all, we're going to have a fair amount of money in this venture in no time flat, and there will be perhaps only 10 or 20 students in the program by the time we have $700,000 in this. Well, we got $300,000 in a building. We've got, if you don't use $200,000 worth of equipment and supplies, I'll be quite surprised. And you know, you got salaries in there for people. So I'm serious. We're going to be close to $700,000. That's a fair chunk of change. You ought to look at us, the board here, as your venture capitalists. And you know, venture capitalists require a pretty solid business plan before they'll get involved in it. Now, the rest of the board may outvote me on that and say, nah, we don't need anything that rigorous. But I think that's good to sort of think about. The other thing that a business plan does, I always feel like we've got squishy targets that we're shooting for, and by the time we get down to the end of this probationary period, we're going to say, well, how do we decide whether we go forward on this or not? And that business plan ought to have some targets and some benchmarks in there that we can use to compare where we actually are at that time. So I think that's another reason why it's very important. The other is, you know, I was, I guess, thinking a lot about Frederic Bastiat, the French economist, who came up with the concept of opportunity cost. We plug $700,000 into this. There are opportunities that we might have financed elsewhere, and quantifying this really clearly helps us quantify those opportunity costs. And I think they're important, because I think this college has spent money in the past on well-meaning projects, but they had horrible opportunity costs associated with them, and they turned into a legacy of opportunity costs. So those are just the things that I think are important.
So give me your business plan elements again, so I have them correct.
Well, there's really got to be a good budget. And there's got to be a good budget that goes through the probationary period, you know, all the way out. 2 years is actually, when it comes right down to it, there are a couple of interesting things. 2 years is a pretty short probationary period. You can get involved in an operation that mines the demand for something over a period of 3 or 4 years, and a two-year probationary period would still tell you there's a lot of demand out there, and we're charging ahead fully when in fact you're still mining out a temporary demand. Believe me, I saw plenty of it in the engineering programs. You mine out temporary demand, and then you got to work on building sort of a sustainable baseline of demand. So, I think that's pretty important. So real budgets there. Where are the revenues coming from? Where are the students coming from, and where are they likely to go? Let me just mention something about Torrington's program, because I know Mr. Vetter, and I talked to him, and he's got a great program up there. There's no doubt. I mean, there aren't maybe 60 programs like that in the United States that can test people like that. But everyone in his program comes from somewhere else, and they're going to end up going somewhere else. They don't stay in Goshen County. And that means that a lot of perhaps a lot of Goshen County's resources are tied up in this, some state resources. I personally wouldn't feel real comfortable telling Laramie County taxpayers that we've got a big program that's going to train people that go off to other jurisdictions and benefit them and benefit us very little. I mean, it's a gray area I'm talking about in there, and a lot of other considerations, but I don't want to get involved in something that is very heavily that way, like the program in Torrington. So I know the people in Goshen County are really pleased with their program, and they have every right to be proud of it. But what I'm saying is they're subsidizing other jurisdictions, and maybe haven't really thought about that. Well, I think about those sorts of things. So. All right, I'm finished. I brought up Frederick Bastiat, and now everyone will run off and get on Wikipedia and find out who Frederick Bastiat is.
Thank you, Kevin. I think those are all points well taken. And so I guess our president, Joe Schaefer, is taking very good notes and maybe would like to have a private meeting with you before our next meeting so that we know which way we want to go.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kelty, certainly like to have a private meeting. Actually, what I'm interested in is getting your insight so that as we develop the program approval process and policy for the institution, I have a clear indication of what types of information the board feels would be most valuable. The Community College Commission's format is okay, but just based off of the past year's conversation, I get the sense that there is more that you want as a board for our program approval. So that's my interest, and Kevin and I can talk offline and kind of get some of that going too, and then we'll do our work on answering these questions for this program proposal as we move forward to your business meeting.
I really appreciate it, and also take Ed's comments under advisement. An advisory committee and agreement with employers might be discussed, and so maybe Ed would like to join you as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Trustee Mosier, I certainly, wherever you're interested, we'd love to do that. I like the concept of a memorandum. I don't know exactly what that means or what specifically we would be asking them for, if it's placement for internships or externship opportunities, or, one of the things we certainly will look at as the board is formed, what types of formalized relationship. Trust me, we would love to nail them down and say, you agree to hire all of our people. They're not willing to do that. And so the other thing we could do, and Stan, you may want to do this, is reach out to Gillette College and get a copy of whatever memorandum they've used and see what types of things they're using and how they fit into the program.
That I can do, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think a key part of that is, industry wants these people, and we've watched that happen. Colleges, different times, they want certain things. You think you're offering them those kinds of skill development in students, and they're taking people off the street at the same wage, and I really think it's inappropriate. We need to be preparing our students so that they have value added, and so that to me is what I'm looking for in the memorandum. What do they want? And if we provide that, we have expectations. They're going to not leave us, I should say, our students hanging.
Thank you. Dr. Schaefer, anything else?
Nope, appreciate the conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, our next agenda item is the amendment to the Hines Capital Core letter of intent, and I'm so sorry that I told you to come like an hour early, so would you please go to the podium?
And Madam Chair, members of the board, Mr. Ohashi's making his way up there because you may have conversations. Just a real brief overview of this. We made good headway. You heard the results of the survey that we conducted with our students here, the results of those at your retreat a few weeks back. Recognizing that there was additional work that we wanted to do, specifically digging a little bit deeper, conducting some student focus groups, as well as getting to the work that we have not gotten to, which is really defining or looking at the management relationship that would be ideal if we move forward with this project. I've asked our student housing folks to start to develop more of a, you'll like this, Dr. Kilty, a business plan and a prospectus for how this would work, what the function would be, and all those things. So they're working on that. And then I know Mr. Ohashi and his team want to evaluate neighborhood impacts and have some assistance in identifying what are the specific infrastructural needs we need down there, parking and all that good stuff. And so what this letter of intent is, or this is essentially amendment to letter of intent saying it's going to take us longer. Here's what we're planning to do. When we're done, if all things are favorable, it might lead to a letter of commitment that I would ask you to approve that would say, at this point, LCCC is in, here's what needs to be done, and turn over the work to Mr. Ohashi and his crew. And so that's the intent of this amendment, and I don't know, Alan, if you want to add anything to that.
No, that was, Madam Chair, that was a good summary of what's happened since we met with you January 4th during the retreat. We've had a couple meetings with Joe and his staff, and those meetings were greatly informed by the information that we received from the retreat, and I think those are reflected almost verbatim in the letter of intent extension. We look forward to moving forward because of the data which will be developed as a result of the focus groups and as a result of the pro forma and business planning that will be done internally here will help us help greatly inform our business planning as well as we move forward.
Any questions? You don't get much time at the mic, although you sat for an hour. I'm so sorry.
Well, you know, that's part of working with public agencies. And I'm happy to sit through your meetings.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, so this will come forward to you and the board at your business meeting later this month.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes. Dr. Pat would like to say a few words to us because this is his last meeting.
Yes.
Well, and Madam Chair,
Yes.
well, we'll let Dr. Pat go so I
He'll
can have the
his
last
moment
word.
of glory.
Have my last word. Madam Chairman, members of the board, I wanted to say just a couple things about my experience here at LCCC and to maybe remind you about what a wonderful place this is. And I'm looking at it from the perspective of a blue state coming to a red state. From a state where the legislature is always in session to a state where the legislature is seldom in session. Coming from a state where the the deficits are in the billions and billions of dollars to a state in which you have a rainy day fund, which I still haven't quite wrapped my arms around, and
it never
trying
rains
to figure
here,
out
though.
why. Yes. Well, there's been a deluge in California, and there is no rainy day fund. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank the board and Joe particularly for saving me from one of the worst winters in San Diego that we've had in decades. And I'm so glad that I've been here instead of there, where it's only moderately cold here and very cold in San Diego. But some of the things that I've noticed right away, some of them, you think, gosh, why did I notice that? One of the first things I noticed was that you guys have hot water running in your restrooms. Now, this may come as a shock to you, but we haven't had hot water running in restrooms in California since about 1974. So that's one of the things that I noticed. I noticed that the campus is extremely clean. No graffiti, no evidence that students and others are doing damage to the plant. I mean, it's a big difference, and it's something that we fight all the time. There's a different ethos, I think, here than there with the students that we have at LCCC and some of the students that we have on the other side of the Rockies. I think that size is something that's been amazing to me. Not only the amazing vistas of the skies here in Wyoming, but one of the first things that I was impressed with was the plant. And Stan took me on a tour down in the career and technical areas, and I thought, my gosh, the folks at Palomar College and at Riverside Community College and at Cerritos College would be absolutely salivating for some of the facilities that we have here at LCCC. It's pretty amazing to me. I think it's also something that I think you know, and it happens at most of the community colleges, but the faculty and the staff and the administrators who are here, there's a real affection and love for the college. And that affection and love for the college exhibits itself in their desire to seek the good of the students and the improvement of the college. It's almost in the old Priestley vocational sense. They have a vocation here to their students. And it's very palpable working with the staff and talking to them and hearing that they really want to improve the outcomes and to improve what you do here. I feel enriched by the opportunity to having worked with faculty, staff, and administrators here. Jeff and I have been meeting for pretty much once a week since I got here. And as an old faculty senate president myself, I kind of know some of the things that he's going through. And you know, faculty leadership that is open to change and that is willing to move forward is extremely important, and you have it here at LCCC. I've been very much impressed with the President's Cabinet, and at least in my interpersonal relationships with whether it's Carol or whether it's Lisa or whether it's Peggy or whether it's Stan. Stan's kind of like my Google. You know, if I want to know something about LCCC, instead of going to my computer and typing in, you know, a question, I'll go see Stan and it'll all pop up. And I've very much enjoyed working with Judy. I think it's very important that academic affairs and student affairs have a close, strong working relationship, and I'm going to miss some of the opportunities to build that. And the classified staff too. I think I've given Cora and a few others a little bit of their blood pressure's gone up a bit over the last few months, but the classified staff here is fabulous, from the gals who work down in the cafeteria to, I mean, I could mention a whole bunch of them, but they're always polite, they're always pleasant, they're always trying to do a good job. And this lady over here has been fantastic, Vicki Boring here, who always has a laugh and makes the place very enjoyable. And finally, I want to say that I counted up today how many presidents I've worked for, and I've been doing this for almost 40 years now, and I've worked for over 12 community college presidents. And I have to say, when Dr. Boggs called me, he said, you know, Pat, you might want to talk to this young guy at LCCC. You know, I think he's something that you're not always used to, okay? And he's absolutely, yes.
You're not withered on the vine.
Yes, that's right. That's the one thing. Yes, as Trustee Mosier said today, the gray is not there yet, okay? It's not there yet. But the thing that I've noticed about Dr. Schaefer that I wouldn't say this about, perhaps I'd say some of this about Dr. Boggs, but not any of the other presidents that I've worked with. And that is, you guys have a unique combination of someone who's committed to students and to student learning, and also has a tremendous command of the literature related to student learning and success. And a real command of that, and he brings it into the leadership position here at LCCC. So I think the college is moving forward. I think that it's a great school. I leave here with a great deal of affection for the crew, the faculty, and the staff, and for working for Joe. And you guys are responsible for a very good college that is going to be much better, I think, in the years to come. Anyway, it's been a pleasure working for you, and who would have thunk I'd end up in Wyoming? Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat.
And Madam Chair, members of the board, if I may, because I'd like to get the last word, but was hoping to say just a couple of words about Dr. Schwartfiger, and that was my goal, was to be able to pronounce his last name by the time he left, and I've almost got it down. But you know, it's funny. I think back to, boy, when we first had the failed search for the vice president this summer, and then I remember saying, you know what, we're going to go out, we're going to do this other search, and I'm willing to step in and be the interim vice president. And I remember faculty kind of coming in, tiptoeing, going to tell me, don't do that. I remember Miss Cora coming in and in her very polite and indirect way saying that's the stupidest idea I ever heard. You know, and I like to say that my mind can be changed, and they made compelling reasons, and that led to conversations with Dr. George Boggs and others, and led to conversations with potential interims. And my first conversations with Dr. Pat were really refreshing because they were incredibly inquisitive. He automatically started with question after question. What do you do this? Can you send me this? Can you do that? And it's probably one of the best decisions that I've made, and probably one of the worst decisions that I've avoided because of the influence of others on this campus that led Pat to coming to LCCC. And I cannot understate the gratitude that we have for what he's done here and what you've done here, but also the impact that he's had. You know, you started in what, September? August? September? September. So in that short of time, he sent us whirling. And a lot of that is influenced by his expertise and his experience. Coming from a state that is so highly regulated, he knows where we don't want to be. He knows where we should be, and there's an opportunity to find that sweet spot here in Wyoming and at LCCC. And he's pushed us to look at things analytically. He's pushed us to look at things from an academic viewpoint, and I know he has started many initiatives, many that I think he wishes and we wish we would be able to complete while he was here. But he has set that foundation, especially from our instructional side, that is going to carry over when Dr. Fierro comes in a week or so, and into the future. And for a short time, that gentleman is going to have a significant impact on the shape of the academy here at LCCC, and we should be very grateful for the work that he's done. I know I am, Pat, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. We will miss you. We will miss you. Come and visit.
Frontier days.
Frontier
Yes,
days.
come and visit. Well, thank you. I have one more item that I would like to bring up. Our president, Dr. Schaefer, would like to take a honeymoon in May, and so I would like to move the board meeting from May 15th, when he'll be gone, to the 22nd. Would that be agreeable with the board?
Yeah.
Okay. He's been married 10 years almost, or 10 years now?
10 years last October.
Okay, so we're going to let him go. And
Thank you.
So Vicki, will that be okay? You'll put it on the meeting list?
Thank you.
And thank you for being our president. Okay, you can read about the next meetings.
Madam Chair, if there's no further business at the business meeting, I would move that we adjourn for
No.
You got me again.
I did, don't do it. You would like to make a motion for it.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Just do that and then I'll adjourn. We have to work this out.
I would move that we adjourn this meeting and take a short break and enter an executive session to speak about some personnel matters.
Thank you. I would like to adjourn this meeting.